What's up, everyone? Here we are. Happy Friday. Thank you so much for being here. Today, I'm going to answer some of your questions. I posted on my Instagram a few days ago. What relationship questions do you have for me? And some of the questions that I got were so juicy, so requiring some deeper explanations that I wanted to go a little bit deeper, that I wanted to spend a little bit more time and put it in a format where you could come back, listen to it, break it down, and take what I'm going to share with you today and start implementing it into your life. Because the way that I teach is I break down situations to help you understand the thought processes, the constructs, the potential blind spots that you have in your programming, in your operating system, in order to arrive at a place where you can see situations more clearly, where you can act more in alignment with who you want to be, where you can lead life in a heart-centered way versus constantly trying to think in the mind, constantly being in a place of overthinking, constantly getting yourself stuck. So we're going to have some really awesome topics today. It's going to be really fun. Let's dive in. If you have any questions along the way, just drop in, but want to get started. Thank you again also for being here. Start with the first question. When do you know someone is right for you as a partner? What you need instead of want? So I think there are two amazing questions here, and we'll break them down individually. So the first piece is, when do you know someone is right for you as a partner? And this is one of the most common questions I get all the time. And it speaks to this need that we have as individuals for certainty. One of the things I think we struggle a lot with is the idea of choice and the idea that there may be someone else out there that's better. We may be putting ourselves in situations where we're less than satisfied and we're wondering, is it me? Is it them? Is it the relationship? Is there something wrong here? Or is this part of what people say when relationships just are hard and relationships just require work and effort, and all relationships are like that, and so this one's no different, and so maybe it's just me. This is the hardest thing that I think people in relationship deal with. And the hardest thing about this is this: when you're in a position where you're questioning whether or not you're in the right relationship, you cannot see whether or not you're in the right relationship, because the very act of your questioning, the very act of your doubting, the very act of your suspiciousness is part of what makes the relationship not be able to reach its fullest potential. It clouds the vision of what's possible between you and the other person. So I want to invite you into this world where we put a lot of credence into yeses and nos. And so if a relationship is a no, if a relationship isn't a match, if I asked you directly and I said, do you think this relationship is still a match? And the answer is no. I highly advise you getting out of that relationship as soon as possible. You're just wasting your time, you're wasting their time, you're blocking the person from flowing in. And I know it can be hard to do this. I was in a relationship where I avoided asking this question for 3.5 years. The relationship was 5.5 years total. Probably the last 3.5 years weren't really what lit me up, weren't really what made me who I wanted to be as a person. And I avoided asking this question directly. And so I invite you into asking that question directly of yourself. If the answer is no, get out. If the answer is maybe, if the answer is I don't know, or if the answer is yes, there's a ton of juice in what we're going to talk about. Because here are the things that you get to ask yourself. One, am I showing up in this relationship how I want? I am someone who does a lot of work on myself. I've read all the self-help books. I've done all the programs. I've done therapy. I've really, really worked hard on who I am. And when I'm in a disagreement with my wife, one of the places where my ego leads me is to a place where I believe that I'm right and I believe that she needs to do more work in the situation. And as you can imagine, that is an incredibly toxic place to be in the relationship. It is eroding to the fabric of the love that exists between us. It degrades the quality of our life. And it's really tempting for me to go there. My ego wants to tell me, oh yes, Jason, you're doing awesome. You've learned so much. You've done so much. When's it going to be up to her to kind of hold up her end of the bargain? She needs to do a better job at communicating her emotions more clearly. She needs to do a better job of listening and understanding me, because if she could understand me, then she wouldn't be upset. And anytime I go there, it's just not a win. And so if I were to ask myself, am I in the right relationship with her, but I was constantly showing up as this person who was needing her to change, who is not accepting her as she is, then how am I supposed to tell whether or not the relationship's a match? Of course I'm going to have a lack of clarity. Of course I'm not going to be able to see the situation clearly. I'm not showing up in a way that would allow this relationship to flourish. I think about it like a garden. If you are complaining that your plant that you're planting isn't growing as well as you'd like, but you're spraying a bunch of chemicals into the garden, then how do you know, is it the plant's fault or is it me? So if you're in this space of I'm not really sure, then I highly advise what you do is start removing the things that you are adding that are toxic. And so many people don't recognize that it takes two people more often than not to add toxicity into the relationship. And again, I'm speaking from personal experience in this. I'm speaking from watching my wife have what I would call an emotional reaction to something that is, quite frankly, shouldn't happen. There was a mistake. I tipped over the water glass and she's very upset. I'm like, this is a water glass. Like, what's the big deal? And I'm not taking into account her experience. I'm invalidating her experience in that. And then I'm distorting the truth of the relationship. So again, I highly encourage you that if you're in this middle ground, to really shift the lens and shift the focus onto yourself. Shift the focus onto how you're showing up, on your triggers, on what you do when you're triggered, and observing how that is impacting the relationship. I know it's not easy, and I really recommend that you put yourself in a group of people, be supported by people that are doing similar work as this in order to help you. But that would be what I absolutely advise, is if you don't know, work on you. Because when you work on you, the right you is going to come out. I had this client a while back, and she was in a relationship with her husband, and she found herself complaining about him all the time to me. And we took all those complaints, and behind each one of them, there was a way that she was matching that energy with her own energy. Rather than asking what she wanted directly, she would say, well, I already asked him like 12 times, so I just made some comment like, oh, you don't want to do this, or it would be really great if you could help out with this. But it had this forceful undertone to it. And so if you're in that space, what I recommend doing is cutting that shit out. Cut that shit out and see what grows in its place. To answer the question more directly, to answer the question of when do you know someone is right for you, I think about one simple question. Does this person help me become more of who I feel like I'm meant to be on this earth? That to me is the number one question to ask yourself when considering when you're with the right person. Not are they toxic, not have they healed themselves, not are they emotionally mature, none of those things. Does this person facilitate, speed up, catalyze the growth of who I am meant to be in this world? And that might not always be a comfortable thing. There are often times where my wife invites me to grow into a version of myself that I'm not quite ready to deal with. I'd still like to be a little bit immature about something. I'd still like to be frustrated about a situation. I'd still like to be heard instead of listening. And every time I get into these pockets, I'm invited into a choice of, do I step more into the version of myself that I know I can be, or do I keep being the version of myself that I've been? And every time I step into the version that I can be and want to be, the relationship gets better, my life gets better. And that's how I know that I'm in the right relationship. Your second question is, what how do you know what you need instead of what you want? So what you need, I think, is one of those things that people throw around a lot. If you can survive in a relationship without the thing, then it is not a need, it's a want. There may be many needs that you have. There may be a lot of things that are actually wants that when you really consider, is it worth me walking away from this relationship over this thing? You might realize that a lot of your needs are actually wants. And so what I recommend you do is actually start shifting your language, start shifting your energy more and more towards what you want and less towards what you need. What you need is going to be the oxygen of the relationship. And if you're asking over and over for your needs to get met, it's either you have some things to work on within yourself, which we can talk about, or what you're actually referring to is you're looking at wants. You're looking at strong wants. The fact that you're still in the relationship, you're still surviving in the relationship, to me makes it not necessarily a need. So this is one of those places where I think people go really wrong and create a lot of force unnecessarily in their life. And when there is force, when there is friction, you're going to drain energy. You're going to stop people from becoming who they want to be, and you're going to stop yourself from becoming who you want to be. So I highly advise at any time you can to cut out the areas in which you're forcing. After all, I teach people how to be in flow. This is one of those ways. Speaking from a place of want. I teach people in my mentorship group, I say, you can invite people into things, into experiences with you, and you can have one of two energies. You can have what I call birthday party energy, where you're in a space of, I'm having a birthday party Saturday. I'd love for you to be there. It would really mean the world to me. If you can't make it, I totally understand, but I'd love to have you there. It's going to be a lot of fun. Or we can go in with IRS energy, which is, I need something from you. If I don't get it, there's going to be severe consequences. And so many of us learn that how we get what we want in relationship is through the latter energy. And we think that our goal is to make threats, our goal is to coerce people into getting what we want, but it just doesn't work. The best thing that we can do is find alignment in the relationship and have the relationship be a vehicle for helping everybody in the relationship be more of who they want to be. That's not necessarily going to say that every moment is going to be easy. That's not to say that every moment is going to be completely straightforward, but over time, and there's a sort of gravitational pull towards you becoming who you want to be. So focus more on what you want and would like, and bring it up with birthday party energy and less IRS energy, and you're going to see your relationship really, really flourish. All right, question number 2. How can I let my past traumas go and give full trust to my current partner? So I want to speak a little bit about a misconception about trauma, and a lot of us have experienced trauma. I have experienced a lot of trauma. Trauma has impacted the way that I've been able to show up in the world in both negative ways and in really positive ways. And I'm not here to tell you, oh, you just need to appreciate your trauma and all of that, although it wouldn't be a bad idea. But what I am here to tell you is that what happened to you doesn't really matter. I'm going to say that again. What happened to you doesn't really matter as it relates to trauma. Trauma isn't about what happened to you, really. Trauma is about how what happened to you, the choices that you made, and the story that you told yourself about what happened is impacting you today. And I think a lot of people come in with this expectation that, oh, I'm going to heal my trauma, and then I'm never going to be triggered ever again. I'm never going to have to deal with any of the things that I'm dealing with. I'm never going to have to deal with the fear and anxiety of what if they do something wrong? What if they cheat on me? What if they leave me? These are the things that we get to address in the moment. The secret to healing trauma is building a skill set that allows you to deal with the results of the trauma in any moment. The secret, I'll say that again, the secret to healing trauma is building a skill set that allows you to deal with the results of the trauma in any moment. What that means is, how is the trauma impacting you right now? What is the way in which it is impacting your ability to show up as you want to be in this relationship? How is it impacting you? Are you experiencing fear? You're experiencing anxiety? You're experiencing tightness in your body? These are all the physical manifestations of the trauma. Now, from what I understand in my own journey and from people who have studied this deeply and done a lot of work in these areas, it is way more effective to think about how to deal with it when it comes up than to try to heal to the point where it never comes up again. And so often when I'm working with students, they do some amazing work and then their triggers don't show up for a few months. And it's like, oh my God, I think I healed this thing. I'm never going to go back to this place ever again. Then usually after a few months, what happens is the trigger shows up again. The trauma shows up again. The patterns show up again. And they think, oh my gosh, none of the stuff that I did before worked. And that's the biggest misconception that you can have when it comes to doing this type of work, is think that because you are triggered, because your past is showing up now, that you're not doing something right. What you need to do instead is become someone who can deal with the situation at hand and who has developed a skill set for moving themselves from being controlled by trauma to making a choice in every moment. When you make a choice, you're stepping out of the past and into the present and into the future that you are creating. When you make a choice, you are acting powerfully, not weakly. When you make a choice, you are acting with accountability, with agency, with a recognition that this is your life, not anybody else's, and no one is coming to save you. Choice is incredibly powerful. So if you're in these moments where you can't trust your partner, if you're in these moments where you feel like, I'm feeling all of this anxiety within me, the answer is not the question isn't, how do I make this never show up again? The question is, how do I respond to it in this moment? How do I create a new neural pathway for what I'm experiencing and show myself that a different way of relating to this is safe? And so it can be something as very simple as taking a few breaths and making a choice. How do you want to show up? We all know that trust is a gift that we give ourselves. When we trust someone, when we open the door for them to hurt us, we recognize that really we are the ones who are benefiting. We're the ones who are living trustworthy. I trust just about everyone. And if someone ever takes advantage of me, which rarely happens, I view that as something that is completely on them, because I know that I'm not adding any negative energy into the dynamic. I'm not going in saying like, I really need to trust you first. I am a very trustworthy person and I'm a very trusting person. And so my default assumption is that people can be trusted. I don't go in with a lack of trust. And even if someone breaks my trust, if I'm in a position where I'm going to trust them again, I trust them fully. I don't hold on to grudges. I don't make someone earn my trust. I believe that trust is a gift that I give myself. And if someone breaks that trust, I'm usually willing to forgive them. At least once, maybe twice. But if someone shows over time a consistent pattern of breaking my trust, that's when I'll exit myself from the relationship. So I hope that helps. How to help my man expand his emotional capacity and container for my emotions. So this is a really interesting topic because a lot of women feel as though their man cannot hold space for them emotionally. And here's what I find when I speak with a lot of women. I have a lot of students who are women, and here's what I find. They operate with it from a place of judgment about their man, about their person. And so what that ends up looking like is they're carrying judgment, which is a type of force. It's a type of energy that says, I'm not okay with what's happening in the world. What's happening in the world is wrong. And when somebody puts out that energy, it doesn't feel good to be on the receiving end of it. So what their husband or their boyfriend or their partner feels is that who I am is not enough, which often triggers the same wound that they've felt their entire lives. And so they feel like they're not being seen. They feel like they're not being understood. And what's very fascinating about this is that women who feel like their man doesn't have emotional capacity is often a reflection of their own unwillingness to have an emotional capacity towards their man. And so when I do this work with women, I help them see how when they get into an emotional place, they are acting with force, they are acting with judgment, they're acting with shame to try to manipulate their man to be someone that he is not in the particular moment. And here's the truth. When you cut all that shit out, men will often step into that role on their own. Here's the way to handle this. Make asks. Ask for the exact thing that you're looking for. Hey, when I express myself emotionally, what I'm looking for is for you to say that you hear me, and that's it. And I'll give you signals. Is that something that you'd like to do? Again, we're using birthday party energy. This isn't IRS energy. This is every time I do this, you never do that, and you always come that. That is not it. That's not the place to ask from. And I can give you scripts to follow, but this is really about finding that energy within yourself. That is, I'm releasing the baggage. I'm coming without judgment. I'm asking for what I want as if I'm inviting a friend to my birthday party. I want him to step into it. And here's what happens. Here's what I see a lot of times in women, and this shows up in anyone, is often we're so invested in coming from a judgmental, resistant, forceful place that we actually don't want change. We actually would rather stay in that space than be truly vulnerable and truly ask and say, hey, this is exactly what I'm looking for from you. Would you like to do that? Because number one, they may say no, in which case you realize the truth of the relationship is not aligned, or they actually say yes and you have nothing to complain about anymore. You get the exact thing that you want. You get seen, you get heard, you get understood, and that is so unsafe for you that you pretend to want it. So take this on. Take this on. Look at yourself first. This is what I tell my students all the time. We have so much power. You are such a powerful person. The more you look at yourself for this, the more power you're going to experience in your life and the more you're going to get what you want. If, in fact, that is what you really want. My hubby is all good when I'm happy and joyful, but he gets triggered when I'm upset or sad. And I think this is very similar to the last question, which comes with this idea of how he is not okay. He needs to be different, right? That is the underlying assumption here, is that my husband needs to be different than he is. He needs to change. And when we make statements like that, even though this is, in this case, a subconscious statement, when we make statements like that, what we need to do instead is recognize that we're projecting. We're projecting our own unwillingness to change, our own unwillingness to grow, our own unwillingness to ask vulnerably for what we really want without negative energy. We're projecting that onto someone else. So I just invite you to look at where you're doing the same thing. Where are you being unwilling to change within yourself? Where do you know that there's more room for you to grow and you're not showing up consistently for that growth? What are you committed to about expressing your emotions? What are you committed to about asking for what you want? How good of a job are you doing at that? Because I imagine if he's getting triggered, it's because something is happening to trigger him. Something about your existence is triggering him. And that same thing is happening to you. His existence is triggering you. His existence is making you go into this place of judgment and that this place that he should be someone else other than who he is. And it's just not going to work for you. And I believe this is from the same question asker. And this will be the last question that we get into. Emotional intelligence in a man is very attractive. How to help my hubby discover this? Lead the way. Lead the way. Ask for exactly what you're looking for. You know, I spoke earlier about this woman that I worked with, and you know, she'd say, I want my husband to take me on dates. I want my husband to surprise me. And what I invited her to do was, okay, well, what if you did all the research, you presented a few different options to him, and then let him pick? And she said, well, that's not really what I'm looking for. I said, but what if it gave him the experience of lighting you up? What if it gave him the delight of lighting you up? Most people are motivated by accomplishment. We're motivated by doing something that feels good. He probably feels like he's put in a lot of time, a lot of energy, and it doesn't get recognized. He's picked a place and then you complained about it. He picked a movie and then you said you didn't like it. He picked something to do and then you complained. And so he doesn't feel seen. He doesn't feel recognized. He doesn't feel heard. So when you talk about emotional intelligence, it carries this energy of that he is somehow less than. And whenever someone feels that, whether or not it's communicated directly, we're going to feel that. Anyone is going to feel that. And so clean up. I teach you, like, the word I use is clean. Clean up your energy. Clean up the judgments that you carry. Clean up the way that you tell your friends about it. Clean up the way that you ask for what you want. These are going to be the things that do such a wonder for you over time. And I want you to try them out. And I appreciate you guys for being here. So thank you so much. I'm going to wrap things up. Thank you again for sharing this time and this space with me. If you have any more questions, you can send them to me on Instagram or on my YouTube and leave a comment. I appreciate you for being here.